I gave her everything, but I guess that wasn't what she wanted. She never once asked about my heart, just about my pension dates. I thought I was building a life with her. Turns out I was just funding one. And I saw the red flags. I just didn't want to believe they were real. I was 67, retired, alone, and for a while I thought she saved me. But maybe I was just her plan B. Maybe I was always just the backup plan, the safety net, the foreigner with the monthly deposit. I don't know anymore. A few nights ago, I got an email from a longtime viewer of this channel, someone who's been quietly listening for years, watching these stories one by one. He wrote, "Your videos make me feel less stupid about what happened to me. I guess we all learn the hard way." I don't know why, but that line stopped me cold. I sat there staring at it for a long time before opening the rest of his message. When I finally did, it felt like the air left the room. His story wasn't just familiar, it was identical. The same promises, the same slow drip of trust, the same way love turned into obligation before he even realized it was happening. As I read, I felt that old ache rise up, the one you try to bury, the one that comes back every time you hear someone else describe your pain in their own words. I could feel his confusion, his embarrassment, that quiet shame of being fooled when all you wanted was connection, and for a moment it felt like I was reading a letter from my past self. It reminded me why I started this channel, not to relive heartbreak, but to understand it, to give a voice to men who've loved, lost, and been left wondering what was real. To everyone who's been here since the start, who comments, likes, or just quietly watches from the shadows, thank you. Truly. You've made this more than a channel. You've made it a community. So wherever you're watching from, Bangkok, Berlin, Brisbane, or Boston, drop a comment below. Tell me where you are. And if you haven't yet, subscribe and stay close. These stories aren't just mine, they're ours. Let me take you back to where it all started. All I know is that when I close my eyes at night, I still see her smile, and I hate that it still makes my chest ache. I hate that after everything she took from me, after every lie and every careful manipulation, I can still remember the exact way her hand felt in mine, small, warm, like it belonged there, like we belonged together. But we never did. I just wanted to believe we did. And that wanting, that desperate need to matter to someone, cost me more than money. It cost me my dignity, my self-respect, and almost cost me my future. Her smile made me forget the silence. That's what I remember most about that afternoon at the noodle shop near the moat. The way Saifa laughed at something I said, something stupid about the weather or the traffic. I can't even remember what it was. But her laugh, it was real. Or at least it felt real. Her hand was resting on mine, warm and small, and the noise of the street faded into this comfortable hum. I watched her pick up her spoon, blow on the broth, and I thought to myself, this is what peace feels like. This is what I came here for. Not the temples or the mountains or the cheap cost of living. This. A woman who looked at me like I mattered. Like I was more than just another gray-haired expat counting down the days until my body gave out. "You're funny, Al," she said, still smiling, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "You don't talk much, but when you do, it's always something good." I shrugged, felt my face get warm. I never knew how to take compliments. Never felt like I deserved them. "I'm not that funny," I said, looking down at my bowl. "You are," she insisted, squeezing my hand gently. Her thumb traced a small circle on my skin. "You make me feel calm. Not like other men. Other men, they always want something. Always pushing. But you're different. You're patient. You listen." I didn't know what to say to that. I just looked at her, this beautiful woman sitting across from me in a little plastic chair at a 50-baht noodle shop, eating like it was the best meal in the world. And maybe it was. Maybe that's all we needed. Simple food, simple conversation, simple connection. She tilted her head, her hair falling over one shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "Nothing," I lied. "Just, I don't know. Happy, I guess." "Me too," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'm happy when I'm with you, Al. You make me feel safe." And I believed her. God, I believed every single word. I wanted to believe it, needed to believe it. Because if she was lying, then what did that make me? Just another fool, another lonely old man who couldn't tell the difference between affection and performance. It had been 3 months since I met her. 3 months since I walked into that beauty clinic near Nimmenhamen because my face was peeling from the sun and I didn't know what else to do. I'd been in Chiang Mai for about 6 months by then, and I still hadn't figured out the basics. Sunscreen. Moisturizer. How to not look like a tourist who just stepped off the plane. The girl at the counter, she wasn't Sasifa, she just pointed me to the back room without much interest. And there she was, in a white coat that was probably 2 sizes too big, holding a bottle of something expensive looking, smiling at me like I wasn't just another sweaty foreigner who'd wandered in off the street. "You need help with your skin, yes?" she asked in careful, practiced English. Her accent was thick but clear. "Yeah," I said, embarrassed, touching my cheek. "I think I got too much Sunday. It's peeling." She stepped closer, examined my face without touching it, just looking with this professional intensity that made me feel like I was under a microscope. "You have sensitive skin," she said finally. "You need moisture and sunscreen every day, even when it's cloudy, especially when it's cloudy." "I'm not good at remembering that stuff," I admitted, feeling stupid. She laughed, not unkindly. "Then I remind you, that's my job. That was it. That's how it started." She sold me the moisturizer, some Korean brand I'd never heard of, and wrote her line ID on the receipt in careful handwriting. "Message me if you have questions," she said, "about the product or anything." I messaged her that night. Not about skincare. Just to say thank you, to tell her she'd been kind and patient and I appreciated it. She replied within minutes, "You're welcome, Al, sleep well." And that felt like more than customer service. That felt like care. Like someone actually gave a damn whether I slept well or not. I messaged her again the next day, asked if she knew a good place to get coffee. She sent me 3 recommendations, each with a little note about what made them special. And then she said, "If you want company, I finish work at 6. I stared at that message for a long time, trying to figure out what it meant. Was she asking me out? Was this just Thai friendliness? Was I reading too much into it? But I wrote back anyway. I'd like that. And when we met that evening, she showed up in jeans and a simple white t-shirt, her hair down, no makeup, and she looked even more beautiful than she had in the clinic. We walked around the old city, stopped for coffee at a place she liked, talked about nothing important. I told her about Canada, about the cold winters that felt like they'd never end, about the empty apartment I left behind. She told me about Lampang, her hometown 2 hours south, about her family, about her mother who raised her alone after her father left when she was 5. "She's sick now," Sasifa said, her voice getting quieter. "Diabetes. It's hard for her, hard for me to watch." "I'm sorry," I said, and I meant it. "That must be difficult." She shook her head, forcing a small smile. "It's okay. I send money every month. It's my job to take care of her. That's what good daughters do." I admired that, the way she carried responsibility without complaining, the way she talked about family like it was sacred. She wasn't like my ex-wife, who always made everything about what she didn't have, what I couldn't provide, what was missing from her life. Sasifa just accepted things, carried her burdens quietly, and it made me feel like maybe I could do the same. Maybe I could learn to be grateful instead of always looking for what was wrong. We started meeting once a week, then twice, then almost every day. She'd finish work at 6, and we'd walk around the city, exploring night markets and temples and little restaurants tucked into alleyways I never would have found on my own. She showed me a Chiang Mai that tourists don't see, the real city, the one where people live and work and struggle and celebrate, and I started to feel like maybe I could belong here, not as a visitor, not as an expat counting his pension and waiting to die, but as someone with a connection, someone with a reason to wake up in the morning. She never asked for anything, never hinted, never made me feel like I owed her something. She'd pay for her own meals, laugh when I insisted on covering the bill, say, "Al, you don't have to take care of me. I'm not a child." But I wanted to, because taking care of someone made me feel like I mattered, like I had value beyond just being another body taking up space in the world. I didn't come to Thailand looking for a woman. That wasn't the plan. The plan was to stretch my pension, live simply, maybe find some peace before I got too old to enjoy it. Vancouver had become a cold, expensive shell of a life. My marriage ended 10 years ago. Not with a fight, not with drama, just with a slow mutual agreement that we didn't love each other anymore. Maybe we never did. Maybe we just got married because that's what people did in their 20s, and then we woke up 30 years later and realized we were strangers living in the same house. The kids were grown, living their own lives in different cities, barely called except on birthdays and holidays, and even those calls felt obligatory, dutiful, like they were checking a box, called Dad. Done. And I was just there, working a job I didn't care about, managing construction projects that all looked the same, coming home to silence, waking up to more of the same. When I retired at 65, I thought I'd feel free. I thought I'd feel like my life was finally starting. Instead, I felt invisible. Like the world had moved on without me, and I was just standing there, watching everyone else live. A buddy of mine, Jerry, he'd been living in Chiang Mai for 5 years, kept sending me photos of temples and mountains and plates of food that cost $2. "You'd love it here, Al," he wrote. "It's quiet. People are kind. You can actually live on your pension and not worry about running out of money before you run out of life." So I came, just for a month at first, to test it out, to see if I could handle being that far from home. But a month turned into 3, and 3 turned into a year, and before I knew it, I'd sold most of my furniture, donated half my belongings, packed 2 suitcases, and bought a one-way ticket. Jerry helped me find a condo, nothing fancy, just a studio near the university with a balcony and a decent kitchen. 7,000 baht a month, less than 300 Canadian dollars. I spent more than that on utilities back home, and for the first time in a decade I felt like I had space to breathe, space to think, space to figure out who I was when I wasn't defined by work or marriage or obligations. But space doesn't fix loneliness, it just gives it more room to echo. I'd wake up at dawn, make coffee, sit on the balcony and watch the city come alive. Motorbikes buzzing like angry bees. Street vendors setting up their carts. Students in uniforms walking to school, laughing and pushing each other. It was beautiful, vibrant, full of life. But I was still alone. I tried to make friends. Went to a few expat meetups, sat in the back of a bar while old guys talked about visa runs and bar girls and which province had the cheapest land. It wasn't for me. I didn't want to be that kind of expat, the kind who came here to exploit, to live like a king on a poor man's wage. I just wanted, I don't know, a reason to smile in the morning, a reason to care about tomorrow. And then Sasifa texted me, "Good morning, Al. Have you eaten yet?" It was such a simple message, such a normal thing to say in Thai culture. But it made my chest feel warm. It made me feel seen. I wrote back, "Not yet." "You?" "I eat already. Rice porridge, but we can eat together tonight if you want. I know a good place for khao soi." I stared at that message for a full minute, my coffee getting cold in my hand. Then I typed, "I'd like that. What time?" And when we met that night, she didn't treat it like a date. She just treated it like 2 people who wanted company, who wanted to share a meal and talk about their days. She told me about a difficult customer who'd complained about everything, about her coworker who always showed up late and left early. And I listened, really listened, because it felt good to be needed, even if it was just as an audience. Even if all I was doing was nodding and saying, "That sounds frustrating," or "You handled that well." It felt like I had a purpose. That's when I started to feel it. That pull. That slow, creeping dependence. I told myself it was just friendship. Just companionship. 2 lonely people finding comfort in each other. But I started planning my days around when I'd see her. I'd check my phone too often, refresh line, hoping for a message. And when she did message, even if it was just a sticker or a "How are you?" I felt like the day was worth living, like I had something to look forward to. She became my routine, my anchor, the thing that made sense in a life that otherwise felt aimless. She never pushed, never demanded my attention, but I gave it anyway, freely, desperately, because attention was all I had to give. That and money. But she didn't ask for money, not at first, not for months, and that made me trust her, made me think she was different, that she actually cared about me, not what I could provide. Then one night, about 4 months in, we were sitting in my condo. She'd come over after work, tired, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, still in her clinic uniform. I made her tea, chamomile I'd bought from a health store near Thapai Gate, and we sat on the couch, watching some Thai drama I didn't understand. The subtitles helped, but I was mostly just watching her face, the way she reacted to the story, the way her expressions changed. She was quiet, too quiet. Normally she'd be commenting on the show, laughing at the dramatic moments, explaining cultural things I didn't get, but tonight she just stared at the screen, her tea untouched. "You okay?" I asked, muting the TV. She nodded, but her eyes looked heavy. Red, almost. Like she'd been crying earlier, just tired, and, I don't know, worried. "About what?" I pressed gently. She hesitated, bit her lip. I could see her struggling with whether to tell me. "My mom," she said finally. "Her medicine, it's getting more expensive. The government hospital, they don't have what she needs. She has to go to private hospital now. I sent her money last week, 10,000 baht, but it's not enough. I don't know what to do." I felt my chest tighten, not because I didn't want to help, but because I knew what was coming. I knew this moment. I'd seen it in movies, read about it in articles about expats getting scammed, but this was different, I told myself. This was Sasifa. She wasn't a bar girl. She wasn't some opportunist. She was educated, professional, real. "How much does she need?" I asked carefully. Sasifa shook her head quickly, almost violently. No, Al. I'm not asking you. Please don't think that. I needed to say it out loud. I needed to tell someone because I can't tell my friends. They all have their own problems. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything." "Don't be sorry," I said, reaching for her hand. It felt cold, trembling slightly. "Seriously, how much does she need?" She looked down at our joined hands. "Maybe 2,000 baht, just to cover what I'm short. But only if you want to help. I don't want you to think I'm using you. I don't want you to think I only spend time with you because you have money. That's not true. I like you, Al. I like spending time with you." "I know," I said, even though a small voice in my head was saying, "Do you?" I ignored it. "I don't think that. Let me help." "Are you sure?" she asked, looking up at me with those big dark eyes. "I can ask my brother. Maybe he can lend me something." "I'm sure," I said. "Your mother needs help. I have money just sitting in my account. It's not doing anything. Let me transfer it to you right now." I grabbed my phone, opened my banking app, transferred 2,000 baht before I could overthink it. Her phone buzzed. She checked it, and tears filled her eyes. Actual tears. She threw her arms around me, buried her face in my chest. "Thank you, Al. Thank you so much. You're so kind. You're such a good man. I don't know what I'd do without you." And when she hugged me, her head against my chest, her body warm and soft and real, I thought, this is what love feels like. This is what it means to matter to someone, to be needed, to be appreciated. And I felt like I'd finally found what I'd been searching for my entire life. But love has a price. I just didn't know I was paying it yet. Over the next 2 months, the requests came more often. Not demands, never demands. Sasifa wasn't crude like that. She was subtle, strategic. She'd drop little sighs into conversation, little mentions, little stories that always ended with a financial problem she didn't know how to solve. "My rent is due next week, and I'm a bit short. I had to help my mom again, so now I don't have enough. My scooter broke down. The mechanic says it needs a new part, 3,000 baht. I don't know how I'm going to get to work. My little brother needs school supplies. Uniform. Books. It's almost 5,000 baht. My mom can't afford it." And every single time, I helped. Because she never made it feel like a transaction. She'd always protest first. Always say, "You don't have to, Naka. I'll figure it out. Maybe I can borrow from someone." But her eyes would look so lost, so stressed, so overwhelmed, and I couldn't stand it. I couldn't stand seeing her suffer when I had the power to fix it. So I'd transfer the money, and she'd cry, and thank me, and hold me close, and tell me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. And that gratitude, it fed something in me. Something that had been starving for years. The need to be a hero. The need to be essential. The need to be loved, not despite my limitations, but because of what I could provide. I started keeping track, not because I was suspicious, but because I wanted to remember. I wanted to have a record of all the ways I'd helped her, all the times I'd been there when she needed me. I had a little notebook where I wrote down what I gave and when. May 15th, 2000 for mother's medicine. May 23rd, 3,000 for scooter repair. June 2nd, 5,000 for brother's school supplies. June 10th, 4,000 for rent shortfall. June 25th, 3,000 for mother's hospital visit. By the end of the second month, it was over 40,000 baht. My pension was 75,000 a month. I could afford it, barely, but I could, and she was worth it. Wasn't she? Wasn't love supposed to be about sacrifice? About putting someone else's needs before your own? That's what I told myself every time I transferred money, every time I saw my savings account shrink a little more. Then I started noticing things. Small things that didn't quite add up. Like how she'd check her phone constantly when we were together, not just glancing at it, really staring at it, typing long messages while I sat there waiting for her attention. Sorry, she'd say with an apologetic smile. My friend has a problem. I need to help her. Or how she'd sometimes cancel last minute. I'd be getting ready to meet her, already out the door, and my phone would buzz. I'm so sorry, Al. My friend needs me. Her boyfriend is being mean to her. I have to go help. Tomorrow, okay? I promise I'll make it up to you. And she would. She'd show up the next day with food she'd cooked herself, or a small gift, a keychain or a bracelet from the night market, or just that smile. That damn smile that made me forget everything. Made me forget the canceled plans and the unanswered messages and the growing sense that something wasn't quite right. But one afternoon I was at Central Festival, just walking around, killing time before meeting Jerry for lunch. And I saw her. She was at a cafe on the second floor, the one with the big windows overlooking the atrium, and she was dressed in a tight black dress I'd never seen before, hair down and styled, makeup done perfectly. Not clinic makeup. Date makeup. And she was laughing. Sitting across from a Thai man, younger than me, maybe 40, well-dressed in a button-down shirt and slacks. They looked comfortable together. Familiar. Like this wasn't the first time. He leaned forward, said something close to her ear, and she threw her head back and laughed in a way I'd never seen her laugh with me. Open, unguarded, real. My stomach dropped. I stood there, half hidden behind a pillar near the escalator, watching like some pathetic stalker. She touched his arm, let her hand linger there. He smiled, covered her hand with his, and she didn't pull away. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. And then she saw me. Her eyes flicked up, scanned the crowd, and landed directly on me. Her face changed, just for a second. A flicker of panic, fear, calculation. And then the smile came back, bright, practiced, perfect. She waved, gestured for me to come over. I didn't want to. Every instinct told me to turn around and leave. But I walked over anyway, my legs feeling like they belonged to someone else. Hi, Al, she said brightly, her voice too cheerful. What are you doing here? I didn't know you come to Central. Just shopping, I said, my voice flat. Meeting Jerry for lunch. Oh, she said, nodding. This is Knock. He works at the clinic with me. We're just having coffee. Planning the schedule for next month. Knock nodded at me, gave a polite way, didn't say anything. His expression was neutral. Unreadable. I forced a smile that felt like broken glass. Nice to meet you. You too, he said in careful English. An awkward silence settled over the table. I could feel myself standing there like an idiot, third wheel to whatever this was. I should go, I said. Jerry's waiting. Okay, Sasifa said, still smiling. I'll call you later, Naka. Yeah, I said. Sure. I walked away, my mind racing. She works at a clinic. He works at a clinic. It's fine. It's nothing. Just coworkers having coffee, planning schedules. That's normal. But it didn't feel normal. It felt wrong. The way she was dressed, the way she touched him, the way she laughed. I'd never heard her laugh like that with me. That night, she called around 9. Are you angry with me? She asked immediately. No, I lied. Why would I be angry? I don't know. You seemed upset earlier. At the mall. I was just surprised, I said carefully. You didn't tell me you'd be there. I didn't plan it, she said quickly. Knock just asked me last minute. We needed to talk about the new schedule. The manager changed everything and now we're all confused. It was easier to meet in person. You look dressed up, I said, hating how jealous I sounded. How pathetic. She laughed. I'm always dressed up, Al. That's just how I am, you know that. I wanted to believe her, so I did. I let myself believe her because the alternative was too painful. Okay, I said. I'm sorry. I'm just being weird. You're not weird, she said, her voice soft and reassuring. You're sweet. And I like you. A lot. Don't forget that, okay? Okay, I said. I won't forget. Good, she said. Now go to sleep. You sound tired. I am, I admitted. Good night, Saifa. Good night, Al. Sweet dreams. I hung up and stared at the ceiling for hours, unable to sleep. I didn't forget, but I also didn't stop thinking about what I'd seen. I started watching her more carefully after that. Not in an obsessive way, I told myself. Just noticing, paying attention to details I'd let slide before, like how she'd go quiet when I asked specific questions about her day, or how she'd change the subject when I mentioned her family. And once when I suggested meeting her mother, she tensed up. Not yet, she said firmly. She's very traditional. She wouldn't understand. Understand what? I asked. That you're older. And foreign. She'd worry. She'd think you're taking advantage of me, or I'm taking advantage of you. It's complicated, Al. Thai families are complicated. I nodded like I understood. But it stung. It made me feel like a secret. Like something she was ashamed of. Like I was good enough to help her pay her bills, but not good enough to meet her family. Then came the pension conversation. The moment, everything shifted. We were at dinner, a little restaurant near her apartment, the kind of place locals go where the menu is only in Thai and the portions are huge and cheap. She was picking at her rice, distracted, her phone face down on the table, but her eyes kept drifting to it. You get paid on the 28th, right? She asked suddenly, casually, like she was commenting on the weather. I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. What? Your pension, she said, looking up at me. It comes on the 28th every month, right? How do you know that? I asked slowly. She blinked, surprised by the edge in my voice. You told me once. I don't think I did, I said, setting my fork down. I'm pretty sure I never mentioned the exact date. She shrugged, went back to pushing rice around her plate. Maybe I guessed. I don't know, Al. Why does it matter? It doesn't, I said quickly, but my voice sounded unconvincing even to me. Because it did matter. Because I'd been careful. I never talked about money directly. Never mentioned amounts or dates. I didn't want to be that guy. The expat who defines himself by his pension. But somehow she knew. Somehow she'd figured it out. Or maybe I had told her, in some moment I'd forgotten. Maybe I was overthinking this. Making something out of nothing. We finished dinner in uncomfortable silence. She kept checking her phone. I kept watching her check her phone. And when we said goodbye that night, her kiss felt perfunctory, automatic, like she was already thinking about something else. After that, I started noticing a pattern. She'd visit more often toward the end of the month. She'd be warmer, more affectionate, more attentive. We'd have longer conversations. She'd stay over, fall asleep on my couch, wake up and make me breakfast. And then, a few days after the 28th, after my pension hit my account, she'd mention something. A bill. A problem. An unexpected expense. Her mother's medication had gone up. Her rent was increasing. Her brother got sick and needed a doctor. And I'd help. Because what else was I going to do? Say no? Watch her struggle when I had 75,000 baht sitting in my account every month? I couldn't do that. I wouldn't do that. But each time, it got a little easier for her to ask, and a little harder for me to pretend it didn't bother me. The gratitude started to feel rehearsed. The tears felt calculated. The way she'd thank me holding my face in her hands, looking into my eyes, saying, "You're such a good man, Al. So kind. So generous. I'm so lucky to have you." It should have felt good. It should have made me feel needed and valued. But instead, I started feeling like a wallet, like the person I was didn't matter as much as what I could provide. And that thought made me feel sick. Made me feel like I was becoming exactly the kind of expat I'd promised myself I'd never be. One night, about 6 months into our relationship, if you could even call it that, I delayed. She asked for 5,000 baht. Her mother needed a procedure. Nothing serious, she said, but the hospital required payment up front. And instead of immediately opening my banking app like I always did, I hesitated. Let me check my account first. I said, I've been spending a lot. I need to make sure I have enough for my own bills. Her face hardened. Just for a second. So fast I almost missed it. But I didn't miss it. I saw the mask slip, saw the flash of anger before she covered it with confusion. Oh, she said, her voice cooling. Okay. I didn't know you'd be so careful with money. I'm not being stingy, I said defensively. I just need to be responsible. I'm on a fixed income. I can't spend without limits. She stood up abruptly, grabbed her bag from the chair. It's fine, Al. I'll figure it out myself. I shouldn't have asked. Saseefa, wait, I said, standing too. I didn't say no. I just said I need to check. But she was already walking to the door, her movements sharp and angry. She turned back, and this time her smile was cold, practiced, empty. It's okay. Really. I understand. You need to take care of yourself first. That's smart. I'm not angry. But everything about her body language said she was angry. She walked over, kissed me on the cheek, mechanical and quick. I'll talk to you later. Then she was gone. I stood there in my empty condo, feeling like I'd just failed some test I didn't know I was taking. Like I was the bad guy for wanting to think about my own financial security. The guilt ate at me for hours. I paced, made tea, stared at my phone. And finally at midnight I transferred the 5,000 baht. She replied immediately. The message came through less than 30 seconds after I hit send. Thank you, baby. You're the best. I'm sorry I got upset. I was just stressed. I love you. See you tomorrow? I stared at those words. I love you. She'd said it a handful of times before, always in moments like this, after I'd helped her, after I'd given her money. Never spontaneously. Never just because. And the word baby. She'd never called me that before. It felt forced. Fake. Like she was trying to manufacture intimacy to make sure the money kept coming. I wanted to feel happy. I wanted to feel loved. But all I felt was empty, hollow, used. 3 weeks later, she disappeared. Not physically at first, just emotionally. Her replies got shorter, less frequent. She stopped calling. When I asked if she wanted to meet, she'd say, I'm busy with work, or I'm not feeling well, or my mom needs me in Lampang. A week went by, then 2. I started getting anxious. That sick, desperate anxiety that sits in your stomach like a stone. I'd check Line obsessively, refresh it every few minutes. See her last seen timestamp update, and know she was online but not responding to me. I told myself she was just busy. People get busy. It doesn't mean anything. But I knew. Deep down, I knew. On the 12th day of radio silence, I went to the clinic. I needed to see her. To talk to her face to face. To understand what was happening. The girl at the counter, the same one who'd been there when I first came in 6 months ago, looked confused when I asked for Saseefa. Saseefa? She repeated. She doesn't work here anymore. My world tilted. What? Since when? Maybe 1 month already, the girl said, checking her phone like she wasn't sure. Maybe more. I don't remember exactly. Why? Do you know where she went? I asked, hearing the desperation in my voice. The girl shook her head, already losing interest. Sorry, I don't know. She just stopped coming one day. The manager tried to call her, but she didn't answer. So we hired someone new. I walked out into the bright Chiang Mai sun, feeling like I'd been punched in the chest. 1 month. She'd been lying to me for at least a month, maybe longer. Every time she said she was at work or tired from work or dealing with drama at the clinic, she was lying. Where had she actually been? What had she actually been doing? Who was she actually with? I called her, straight to voicemail. I messaged her. No response. Her line profile picture, the one of her smiling at Doi Suthep that I'd taken, disappeared, replaced with the default gray silhouette. And then, 5 days later, on a Tuesday morning while I was drinking coffee on my balcony, my phone buzzed. A message. From Sassifa. My heart jumped. Relief flooded through me. She was okay. There was an explanation. Everything was fine. I opened it. Sorry. I have to take care of my family in Lampang. It's better this way. Take care of yourself, Al. That's it. 18 words. No explanation, no apology, no acknowledgement of the 6 months we'd spent together, the meals we'd shared, the conversations we'd had, the money I'd given her. Just, it's better this way. I stared at my phone, reading it over and over, trying to find something more, some hidden meaning, some sign that she actually cared. But there was nothing. Just those 18 cold, clinical words. I tried to reply. What do you mean? What happened? Can we talk? The message didn't deliver. I tried calling. Blocked. I tried line. Account deleted or blocked, I couldn't tell which. She was gone. Completely. Like she'd never existed. I sat on my balcony that morning, my coffee going cold, my notebook open in front of me. The one where I'd been tracking what I'd given her. I added up everything. Every transfer. Every cash payment. Every meal I'd paid for. Every small gift. 423,000 baht. Over 6 months. More than half my yearly pension. Gone. And for what? For her smile? For the illusion that someone cared? For the fantasy that I wasn't just another lonely old man waiting to die? I felt like an idiot. No, worse than an idiot. I felt like a mark. A target. A walking ATM with foreigner stamped on my forehead. I'd let myself believe that I was special. That she saw something in me beyond the monthly deposit, beyond the foreign passport, beyond the pension that arrived like clockwork on the 28th of every month. But she didn't. She never did. I was just another foreigner, another lonely old man with money to burn. And she burned through it, efficiently, professionally, without ever making it feel like that's what she was doing. I stopped going to the places we used to go. The noodle shop near the moat where she'd held my hand and told me I made her feel calm. The coffee place on Nimmenhamen where we'd spent hours talking about nothing. The night market where she'd point at things she liked and I'd buy them without her asking. Every corner of this city reminded me of her. Every street held a memory that now felt poisoned, corrupted, fake, and it hurt too much to face them. So I started eating alone in my condo, ordering delivery from restaurants I'd never been to. Avoiding people. Jerry called a few times, left voicemails asking if I wanted to grab a beer, catch up, maybe go to that new burger place near his apartment. I made excuses. Told him I was tired. Told him I had things to do. Told him anything except the truth, which was that I couldn't face him. Couldn't face the inevitable conversation where he'd ask about Sassifa and I'd have to admit that I'd been played, that I'd ignored every warning sign. That I'd let my loneliness and my need to matter override my common sense. Jerry was a good guy. He wouldn't have said, "I told you so," even though he probably thought it. But I'd say it to myself. Every night, every morning, every time I looked at my bank account and saw how little was left. Every time I calculated how many months of financial security I'd traded for 6 months of fantasy. The nights were the worst. I'd lie in bed, ceiling fan spinning above me, and replay every conversation. Every moment, looking for the signs I'd missed, looking for the exact point where it turned from real to transactional. But I couldn't find it, because maybe it was always transactional. Maybe from that very first moment in the clinic, when she wrote her line ID on the receipt and smiled at me like I mattered, maybe even then she was calculating, assessing, determining whether I was worth the investment of her time. And I passed whatever test she was running. I was old enough to be retired, young enough to not be a burden, foreign enough to have money, lonely enough to be grateful for attention. I was perfect, the ideal target, and I walked right into it with my eyes wide open, mistaking performance for affection, transactions for love. I started having conversations with her in my head, arguments I'd never get to have in real life. I'd imagine confronting her, demanding answers, asking her if any of it was real. Did you ever actually like me? I'd ask in these imaginary conversations. Or was I always just a pension check to you? And in my mind, she'd have different answers. Sometimes she'd cry and apologize, admit she'd made a mistake, beg for forgiveness. Sometimes she'd laugh and tell me I was stupid for believing her. Sometimes she'd just stare at me with those beautiful empty eyes and say nothing at all. But none of it mattered because these conversations only happened in my head. In reality, she was gone, silent, unreachable, living her life somewhere with my money in her account, and probably another man lined up to replace me. But beneath the pain, beneath the anger and the shame and the crushing loneliness, something else started growing, slowly, quietly, like a seed pushing through concrete, a realization. I didn't just lose her, I lost my illusion, the illusion that I could buy love, that I could pay for companionship and call it real, the illusion that I wasn't lonely as long as someone was sitting next to me, even if they were only there because I was paying them to be. And maybe that illusion needed to die. Maybe I needed to face the truth about myself, about why I'd left Canada, about what I was really running from. I didn't leave because of the weather or the cost of living or the promise of a peaceful retirement. I left because I was invisible back home, because my kids had their own lives and didn't need me, because my ex-wife had moved on and built a new life without me, because every day felt the same and I couldn't stand looking at myself in the mirror anymore. Couldn't stand seeing this old man with nothing to show for his 67 years except some money in the bank and a body that was slowly failing. I came to Thailand thinking I could escape my loneliness. But I just brought it with me, wrapped it in a different language, a different climate, a different woman's smile, and it was still the same, still hollow, still eating me from the inside out. One night, about a month after she disappeared, I opened Line and typed out a message I never sent. My fingers moved across the screen almost automatically, like they needed to say these things even if she'd never read them. I still don't hate you. I should, but I don't. I'm angry. I'm hurt. I feel stupid and used and pathetic. But I don't hate you. Because hating you would mean I'd learn nothing from this. Hating you would mean I could blame you for everything and not look at my own choices. But I made choices too. I chose to ignore the red flags. I chose to believe what I wanted to believe instead of what was in front of me. I chose to let my need for connection override my judgment. So I don't hate you. I just wish you had loved me enough to be honest. I wish you had told me what I was to you. Maybe I would have understood, maybe I would have walked away sooner, or maybe I would have stayed anyway, because being used felt better than being alone. I don't know. I'll never know. And I guess that's what hurts most. Not that you left, not even that you took my money, but that you were never really here. That I spent 6 months falling in love with someone who didn't exist. You showed me a version of yourself that was designed to extract maximum value from me with minimum emotional investment. And it worked. You were good at it. Professional. I wonder how many men before me, how many men after me, how many other foreigners are sitting in their condos right now, typing messages they'll never send to women who were never who they pretended to be. I read it 3 times. Then I deleted it. Every word. Watched the cursor erase the paragraph sentence by sentence until the screen was blank again. There was no point. She wouldn't read it. And even if she did, it wouldn't change anything. She didn't owe me honesty. I owed it to myself. And I'd failed. I'd lied to myself more than she ever lied to me. I told myself I was building a relationship when I was really just buying temporary relief from loneliness. I told myself she cared when what she actually cared about was whether my pension had cleared. I told myself I was special when I was just convenient. But I didn't leave Thailand. I thought about it constantly for weeks. Thought about packing up, going back to Canada, admitting defeat, crawling back to that empty apartment in Vancouver where at least the scams were in English and I could see them coming. But what was waiting for me there? Another cold winter? Another year of phone calls with my kids that lasted 10 minutes and felt obligatory? Another decade of slow decay in a country that had no use for old men who'd already given everything they had to give? At least here, I had the Sunday, I had the mountains. I had the temples where I could sit for hours watching monks go about their routines, finding peace in rituals I didn't fully understand. I had the street vendors who smiled at me every morning, who knew my order, who called me uncle and made me feel like I belonged somewhere. I had the quiet mornings on my balcony where the city woke up slowly and I could drink my coffee and not feel completely alone. So I stayed. But I lived differently. I had to. I couldn't keep being the man who'd let Sasifa take 400,000 baht. I couldn't keep being that vulnerable, that desperate, that easy. I stopped looking for someone to fill the silence. I started filling it myself. I enrolled in a Thai language class at the university, something I should have done when I first arrived. Sat in a classroom with other foreigners, mostly younger than me, mostly digital nomads and English teachers, and learned how to ask for directions and order food and talk about the weather. The teacher, a tiny woman in her 50s named Ajarn Pornthip, was patient with my terrible pronunciation. She'd smile and correct me gently, and I started to feel like maybe I could belong here without needing someone to translate my life for me. I joined a photography group that met every Saturday morning. We'd walk around the old city, taking pictures of temples and markets and ordinary people doing ordinary things. I wasn't good at it. My photos were technically fine but emotionally empty. But it gave me something to do. Something to focus on besides the woman-shaped hole in my life. I volunteered at a temple near my condo, helping with their English program, teaching monks basic conversation skills so they could interact with tourists. It was humbling. These young men in their orange robes, who'd given up everything for their faith, treating me with respect I didn't feel like I deserved. Calling me Ayar and Al and listening carefully to my lessons like my words mattered, and slowly, so slowly I almost didn't notice it happening, the days stopped feeling so heavy. The weight that had been pressing on my chest since Sasifa left started to lift, not completely, not even mostly, but enough that I could breathe. Enough that I could wake up in the morning without immediately checking my phone to see if maybe she'd messaged me. Enough that I could walk past the places we used to go without feeling like I'd been stabbed. I still thought about her, probably always would. The human brain doesn't let go easily. It holds on to things, even painful things, especially painful things, because at least pain means you felt something. At least pain means you were alive. But the thoughts didn't cut as deep anymore. They were more like scars than open wounds. I could look at them, acknowledge them, and move on with my day. I could see a woman with long black hair on the street and not feel my heart stop. I could hear someone laugh in that particular way and not turn around expecting to see her. I could survive. That's what it came down to. Survival. Not happiness. Not peace. Not healing. Just survival. Getting through each day without falling apart. Without making stupid decisions driven by loneliness. Without needing someone else to validate my existence. And I learned something fundamental about love and about myself. Love that needs money to survive isn't love. It's a transaction. It's a business arrangement dressed up in emotional language to make both parties feel better about what they're doing. The person receiving the money gets to pretend they're in a relationship, not engaged in sex work or financial extraction. The person giving the money gets to pretend they're loved, not just tolerated for their bank balance. And both people know the truth, but neither wants to say it out loud, because saying it would mean facing reality. And reality is uncomfortable. Reality is lonely. Reality is admitting that genuine connection is rare and difficult and can't be purchased at any price. I don't blame Sasifa for what she did. Not anymore. Not really. She was doing what she had to do to survive in a country where women have limited economic opportunities and aging parents to support and brothers who need school supplies. She saw an opportunity and she took it. She was smart, strategic, professional. She never promised me forever. She never said we were building a life together. Those were stories I told myself. Fantasies I constructed from raw materials she provided. She just showed up, smiled, held my hand, and accepted the money I freely gave. Was it manipulative? Yes. Was it cruel? Maybe. But was it her fault that I was so desperate for connection that I mistook financial dependence for love? No. That was on me. Maybe her mother really was sick. Maybe she really did need the money for medicine and hospital visits and all the things she said. Or maybe it was all a story. Maybe her mother is healthy and her brother graduated years ago and the rent was never due. I'll never know. And that uncertainty used to torture me. I'd lie awake running through possibilities, trying to determine which version was true, as if knowing would somehow make it hurt less. But it doesn't matter. The truth doesn't change the outcome. Whether she lied or told the truth, whether she cared a little or not at all, the result is the same. She's gone. The money is gone. And I'm still here, sitting on this balcony, trying to figure out who I am when I'm not defined by someone else's needs. I see her sometimes. Not in person, but in my mind. I'll be walking through the old city and a memory will hit me sideways. Her laugh, the way she'd wrinkle her nose when she tasted something sour, the way her hand fit in mine, the way she'd rest her head on my shoulder when we watched TV. And for a moment, just a moment, I'll miss her. Not the real her, because I don't know who that is, but the version of her I fell in love with. The illusion, the performance. And I wonder if she ever thinks about me. If she ever feels guilty about the 400,000 baht she took. Or if I'm just one name in a long list of foreign men who thought they were special and learned they weren't. I hope she's okay, wherever she is. I really do. I hope her mother is healthy. I hope her life is easier now. I hope she found whatever she was looking for. Because despite everything, despite the lies and the manipulation and the careful extraction of money, I don't wish her harm. I just wish she'd been honest. I wish she'd said, from the very beginning, I need money. I have responsibilities. I'm willing to spend time with you, to be affectionate, to make you feel cared for, but this is transactional. When the money stops, this stops. And maybe I still would have said yes. Maybe the loneliness was so crushing that I would have accepted those terms. At least then I would have known. At least I wouldn't have spent 6 months believing in something that wasn't real. But maybe that's the thing about belief. It doesn't need to be real to feel real. And for 6 months I felt loved, I felt needed, I felt like I mattered. And even if it was all a lie, those feelings were mine. She didn't give them to me. I gave them to myself. I just used her as the excuse. Used her as the screen onto which I projected all my hopes and needs and desperate desires for connection. And that's the hardest part to accept, that I did this to myself. She was just the instrument, the catalyst, the mirror I chose to look into. And when the mirror cracked, I saw myself clearly for the first time in years. An old man, desperate for connection, willing to pay for it, willing to ignore every red flag, every warning sign, every moment of doubt because the alternative was admitting I was alone. And I was so tired of being alone. So tired of waking up and having no reason to get out of bed. So tired of talking to myself because there was no one else to talk to. So tired of existing in this liminal space between life and death, not really living but not ready to die either. But being alone isn't the worst thing that can happen to you. I know that now. Being with someone who doesn't see you, that's worse. Being with someone who only shows up when your bank account does, that's worse. Being with someone who makes you feel invisible even when they're sitting right next to you, that's worse. And I'd rather sit on this balcony by myself, drinking bad coffee and watching the sunrise, than ever feel that invisible again. So I walk slower now. My knees hurt in the mornings. My skin still peels if I forget the sunscreen that I'm now religious about applying, but I'm wiser. I'm more careful. I'm more aware of my own vulnerabilities and how easily they can be exploited. And that's worth something. That's worth the 400,000 baht I'll never get back. That's worth the 6 months I wasted on a relationship that was never a relationship. That's worth the heartbreak and the shame and the long nights of self-recrimination. I sit on my balcony most mornings now, coffee in hand, watching the city wake up. Motorbikes and tuk-tuks and street vendors setting up their carts, students walking to school, monks collecting alms, dogs sleeping in the shade, life happening all around me, indifferent to my pain, indifferent to my existence, just continuing on the way it always does, and I don't feel alone anymore. Not really. I feel at peace. Not the kind of peace I thought I'd find with someone else, not the peace of shared silence or comfortable companionship, but the kind you find when you stop looking outside yourself for validation. When you stop needing someone to tell you you're worth loving because you already know. When you stop measuring your value by whether someone shows up or answers your messages or holds your hand across a table at a noodle shop. I gave her everything. And she took it. And that's on both of us. Me for giving without boundaries, without self-protection, without thinking about my own future. Her for taking without guilt, without honesty, without considering that the man behind the money had feelings and hopes and a heart that could break. But I'm not angry anymore. Anger takes energy I don't have. Anger keeps you connected to the person who hurt you, keeps them living rent-free in your head, keeps you from moving forward. And I need to move forward. I need to build something new from what's left. So, I'm here. Still breathing, still living, still finding small reasons to smile. The coffee's good, even if I make it wrong half the time. The sunrise is beautiful, painting the mountains gold and pink every morning without fail. The street vendor on my corner recognizes me now, calls me Lung Al, Uncle Al, and always gives me extra fruit. The monks at the temple where I volunteer smile when they see me coming. The other students in my Thai class laugh at my pronunciation but encourage me to keep trying, and I have enough money if I'm careful, to live comfortably for the rest of my life. Enough time to figure out who I am and what I want. Enough of myself left to rebuild. That's more than a lot of people get. That's more than I had in Vancouver, where I had money and security but no purpose, no connection, no reason to wake up early and watch the sunrise. Here, in this city that broke my heart, I have something resembling a life. It's small, it's quiet, it's nothing like what I imagined when I first moved here, but it's mine, built on truth instead of illusion, built on self-awareness instead of desperate need, built on the understanding that I'm enough, by myself, without needing someone else to complete me or validate me or make me feel like my existence matters. I still see her sometimes in my dreams, different versions of her. Sometimes she's the woman from the noodle shop, smiling and holding my hand, and I wake up feeling peaceful. Sometimes she's the woman at the mall, dressed up and laughing with another man, and I wake up feeling betrayed all over again. Sometimes she's standing in my condo doorway with her bag packed, about to leave, and I'm begging her to stay, and she just looks at me with this sad, pitying expression and says, "You never really knew me, Al. You just needed someone, and I was there." And that version, that dream, feels the most true. Because she's right, I never really knew her. I knew a performance, a carefully crafted persona designed to extract maximum resources with minimum emotional investment, and I fell for it completely because I needed to believe that someone could love me, that someone could see past my age and my loneliness and my desperation and find something worth caring about. But love doesn't work that way. You can't need someone into loving you. You can't pay someone to care. You can't buy your way out of loneliness. You can only face it, sit with it, learn to exist inside it without letting it consume you. And I'm learning. Slowly, painfully, with setbacks and bad days and moments where I almost message her, almost unblock her number, almost beg her to come back even though I know she won't, and even though I know it would be a mistake. But I don't. I sit with the impulse until it passes. I make coffee, I water my plants, I practice my Thai, I plan my photography walk for Saturday. I remind myself that this life, small and quiet as it is better than the alternative, better than living in fantasy, better than building my happiness on someone else's lies, better than needing another person to make me feel human. I'm 67 years old. I have maybe 20 good years left if I'm lucky, maybe less. And I don't want to spend those years chasing illusions or running from loneliness or looking for someone to save me. I want to spend them being honest, with myself, about what I need and what I can provide and where my limits are. I want to spend them building something real, even if it's just a quiet life in a Chiang Mai studio with a balcony and bad coffee and plants that I sometimes forget to water. I gave her everything. My money, my trust, my heart, and she took it all and disappeared without looking back. And for a long time that felt like the end of my story. Like I'd used up all my chances at happiness and this was it. This was how I'd spend the rest of my life, alone and bitter and filled with regret. But it's not the end. It's just a chapter. A painful, expensive, humiliating chapter that taught me more about myself than any happiness ever could have. I learned that I'm stronger than I thought, that I can survive heartbreak at 67, that I can rebuild when everything falls apart, that I can look at my mistakes honestly, without flinching, without making excuses, and still choose to keep going. I learned that I'm worth more than I believed, that my value doesn't come from how much money I have or how useful I am to someone else, that I deserve honesty and respect and real connection, not just the appearance of those things. I learned that loneliness is hard but being used is harder. That silence is uncomfortable but lies are unbearable. That being alone with yourself is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. And I learned that Thailand didn't betray me. Sasaifa did. This city, with its temples and mountains and street food and kind people, didn't do anything wrong. It's still beautiful, still peaceful. Still a place where I can build a life if I'm smart and careful and honest about my limitations. So I'm staying. Not because I'm running away from anything anymore, but because I'm running toward something, toward self-sufficiency, toward honesty, toward a life where I don't need anyone to tell me I'm okay because I already know I am. Where I can sit on this balcony and watch the sun rise and feel grateful, not for what I have but for what I've learned. Where I can walk through the old city without flinching at memories. Where I can see a beautiful woman and appreciate her beauty without immediately wondering if she could love me. Where I can exist in my own skin without needing external validation. It's not the life I planned. It's not the life I wanted when I first came here, full of hope and possibility and naive dreams about starting over, but it's real. It's honest. It's mine. And that's enough. It has to be enough. Because I'm not getting younger. I'm not getting richer. I'm not getting another chance to rebuild from scratch. This is it. This is the life I have. This small studio. This balcony. This city that broke my heart and taught me how to fix it. These small routines that give shape to my days. These small victories, like conjugating a Thai verb correctly, or taking a photograph that actually captures something true, or having a conversation with a monk that goes beyond pleasantries. This is what I have. This is who I am. An old man who made mistakes, who trusted the wrong person, who let loneliness override judgment, who gave away too much and got too little back, but also an old man who survived, who learned, who's still here, still trying, still finding reasons to watch the sunrise. And maybe that's all any of us can do. Survive our mistakes, learn from them, try to do better, try to be better, try to build something real from the wreckage of our illusions. I thought she loved me for who I am. And when I found out she didn't, I thought that meant I wasn't worth loving. But that's not true. It just means she wasn't capable of seeing me. And that's her loss, not mine, because I'm still here, still standing, still waking up every morning and choosing to try again. And that's something she can never take from me. She took my money. She took my time. She took 6 months of my life. But she didn't take me. I'm still here. And I'm enough. I've always been enough. I just forgot for a while, but I remember now, and I won't forget again, not for her. Not for anyone. Because the only person who needs to believe I'm worth loving is me. And I'm getting there. Slowly. One sunrise at a time.